Hi guys, sorry I couldn't get this review up faster for you, but you know, life man, life! Alright, so based on my outfit, you probably know what I'm here to talk about. That's right, I'm here to talk about Wicked for Good, part 2. You know, for me, it's really rare to talk about a film or review a film that's been released for over a week because it feels like you kind of already missed the wave of interest and people are already on to talking about the next film. However, this is just one of those times where I felt compelled to talk about a movie solely because of just how much I loved it. So today I'm going to be talking about, so far, my favorite movie of the year, One Battle After Another. I'm gonna list the reasons why I think it will win Best Picture, what other awards it can win, what other competition is in the way, and all types of stuff. And I may also bring up specific scenes from the film, so if you haven't seen this film already, which I don't know why you haven't yet, definitely go watch this movie. But if you haven't, this is your warning to stop this video right now. Now, there was a lot of hype surrounding this film coming in. I couldn't get my hands on any tickets prior. I watched it at a public screening. I saw it at the Vista. I watched One Battle and Vista Vision. And then I did something that I hardly ever do. I went back and actually watched it again. And I loved it just the same the second time. And I was really pleased that I felt like the film really lived up to the hype. And then the days following, I kind of saw a little bit of a backlash towards it, if you want to call it that. The usual factions of people who paint this movie as, you know, woke or overrated. And, you know, some of the right claim how it's a romantic love letter to Antifa. I think Ben Shapiro posted a video about One Battle After Another. I think it was called Woke Movie Promotes Violence Against ICE. Only, it kind of doesn't. I mean, not a single ICE character in my memory from the entire film is killed by a member of these revolutionary characters. And then some on the left walk away with the opinion that this film was anti-revolutionary. So, I mean, it just kind of shows that you really can't truly please everyone. It's a fictional story based on a book from over 30 years ago. You know, the story takes place in a non-specific time period in some sort of parallel reality, yet some criticize the film for not being an accurate portrayal of the current political times, which I don't understand. I mean, I've always said that about the film Zootopia as well. I mean, come on. Judy Hobbs learns of her own unconscious bias and how a false flag can be used to incite fear over a specific group in order to gain political power, yet everyone at the same time knows that bunnies can't talk. Come on, can't fool me. One Battle After Another it's a political movie, there's no doubt about it. But this film doesn't just speak to the absurdity and the bleakness of today, but also speaks to the never-ending battle of resistance against government overreach throughout history. And I think this film has me thinking about, yeah, the current ICE raids, but also about the Palmer raids of the early 20s, where the government targeted many labor leaders and immigrants and deporting them without due process. And Benicio del Toro's character in this film, Sensei, draws another comparison between his own evacuation of Latino immigrants to that of the Underground Railroad. The film highlights that sentiment of history repeating itself. And coming out of the theater, I didn't come away with the idea that revolutionaries or disruptors are always righteous, but I did come away thinking about how quickly we would fall into totalitarianism without their efforts. The film is a little bit about today's times, but it feels much more like a dark satire of what tomorrow could look like if America did become a full-blown police state. And I think where audiences are kind of split on this film is where you land on the question, do you think it's appropriate to ever question the government and its authority? If the answer for you is no, then you'll likely see these revolutionary characters as law-breaking troublemakers. Now, if that answer is yes, then you probably understand that, say, when a government tells you that, you know, black people can eat at this restaurant, or when a government tells you that harboring Jewish people is a crime punishable by death, then there are times that questioning authority is not only appropriate, but it's the moral thing to do. I think this film is all about resistance. The point I'm trying to make is that this film is likely going to already mirror and align with what your values and your beliefs already are. And I can only speak for myself in saying that I think this film does a really excellent job in portraying a government kind of slipping into extremism and that messiness surrounding a movement of citizens not willing to go down without a fight. I know another thing I saw Ben Shapiro complain about in this film was the secret society of white supremacists called the Christmas Adventurers Club within this film, and he called it completely ridiculous. He thinks it's ridiculous, and it is ridiculous because that's what a satire is. And political satire aside, which by the way, this film isn't really focused on ideologies themselves or trying to shove any type of political ideology down your throat. This film is much more about these characters, their past decisions, and how it kind of catches up with them. And the film at its core, it's just like a thrilling, epic, often hilarious story that is just fascinating on every level, from its technical presentation to its performances. And this film is really just about kind of fathers and daughters and the generational gaps, and it shows kind of the complexities that come with being a rebel and how your priorities and your loyalties shift when having a child. The runtime is 10 minutes, shy of 3 hours, but it felt like less than 2 hours. As much as I love experiencing PTA films, I do admit that they don't always zip by for me. But I am always up for whatever ride PTA wants to take me on, but I'm definitely more drawn to his more earlier works of, like, say, the oddly romantic Punch Drunk Love, or the strange melodramatic Magnolia, or his very sinister There Will Be Blood, over, say, his looser Licorice Pizza and psychedelic Inherent Vice. One Battle After Another, though, was just such a refreshing change of pace for PTA, making the type of popcorn entertainment that is just so narratively satisfying and just airtight. And my first thought coming out of the theater was like, wow, like PTA just made the type of movie that I've been hungry for Tarantino to make for the past 15 years or so. And like a Tarantino film, One Battle is filled to the brim with quotable lines of dialogue and rich characters and a visual style that just you hardly ever see on the big screen today. It is a spectacle. Leonardo DiCaprio gives a performance that is just both comedically ridiculous and emotionally layered, with his love for his daughter really driving his character. Sean Penn. All right, so the first time I saw this, I was really taken by his physicality, the detailed way he kind of carries himself. I thought his character was repulsive and absurd, and sometimes I felt maybe it was a little too over the top. But when I rewatched it, he really stood out for me. Penn just provides so much context into Lockjaw's psyche and tells entire stories with just these expressions. And the tragic and pathetic nature behind this character, this domineering force, just really stood out for me on that second watch. And Tiana Taylor is really only in the prologue of this film, but she is just completely magnetic. Her character Perfidia is really elusive and very complicated. She engages in a very, very uncomfortable relationship with Lockjaw where her motives are very complex. She makes some pretty selfish decisions in this film, but I found her character to be really challenging in ways that I really appreciated. And Benicio del Toro, I think, has some of my favorite moments in the film. A Few Small Beers and the selfie moment was just so infectious. Chase Infinity, of course, she has a great presence as well. Really commands the screen, really giving this film a needed emotional layer. I mean, the cast as a whole, including Regina Hall, who is really subdued and kind of the opposite side of the coin as Perfidia, someone who's really grounded. I thought she was great. And Johnny Greenwood's score, to me, was freaking incredible. And what really made this film what it was, there are times where the music has this kind of jerky piano keys that helps kind of create a very unpredictable build of tension. There were times in this film I felt like my heart was in my stomach. Other times the score was very haunting and a bit operatic. The cinematography is also very alive in this film. Sometimes it even felt like the whites or the highlights were blown out. But those kind of imperfections and that kind of grit and texture, I think just added a lot of character. I think the French Connection was used as a reference point for the cinematography team of One Battle, and especially in the last portion of the film, I think it really shares the French Connection's handheld frenetic style. One of my favorite scenes was that long portion of Leonardo DiCaprio's character being guided by Benicio del Toro in his apartment where there was just so much world building within the filmmaking. And I also just really loved the sense of community within the film, you know, from senseis, skateboarders, and the nurses at the hospital. The film really highlights the motto of kind of it takes a village. The only part of the film that kind of still didn't entirely work for me, even on the second watch, was the character Ivanti, the Native American bounty hunter. There's a key scene in which he engages in that kind of act of resistance, or as Sensei would say, courage. And I'm not sure that I got enough prior to really kind of make that moment as believable as maybe it could have. I just wish I had gotten like one little brief scene with him prior to help kind of sell that moment for me. But that's really just kind of a small quibble in a film that otherwise just blew me away. Like many have already mentioned, also that climax that occurs on these large hill roads was just breathtaking. And the film is just so alive and expansive, and the film just really absorbed me from beginning to end. So yeah, this was easily my favorite film of the year, and I'd be surprised to see if anything tops it. I don't think anything will top it. But let's talk about Oscars. So clearly I'm biased. I don't know if I can see clearly on the Oscar race, but I'm going to try to remove my passion for the film and think about whether it really can win Best Picture. The Wrap had an article earlier this year that said that over 70% of the top 100 most in-demand movies in 2024 were based on existing IP. And with Sinners and now One Battle After Another, I think WB should be really praised for platforming and throwing money behind not just one, but two of the biggest, most original cinematic experiences of the year. Even though Battle was based off a book, it was a very loose adaptation, so I think original still very much applies here. But is this the type of film that could really win Best Picture? You know, politics are often deemed too divisive for your typical Best Picture winner, so that could hurt it. However, just when stacked up against the other contenders this year, in terms of scope, and just kind of hitting all those marks, I think One Battle just really kind of blows the other contenders away a bit. I mean, if you look at the recent winners, often the winner goes to the film where the art appreciators and the regular moviegoers can shake hands and agree upon a movie. And like last year's Anora, I think One Battle After Another really fits that bill pretty nicely. The only other factor that I think could stop it, in my opinion, besides Marty Supreme and Hamnet, is if the film is just too divisive. Because there is a strong overdue narrative for Paul Thomas Anderson, who has received 11 nominations and has not won a single Oscar. And PTA has just become, you know, he's the guy. And similar to Christopher Nolan winning for Oppenheimer or the Coen brothers winning for No Country for Old Men, I think that this is the year we're in for. I think we're looking at a pretty decent sweep with One Battle taking PGA, DGA, and I think it makes an excellent case for SAG Ensemble as well. The only two films that I think could possibly dethrone One Battle in the end is Hamnet, because it pulls those emotional strings so hard. I think the Letterboxd scores on that are very strong. And when it comes to emotion, I just don't think you can underestimate it. And then you have Marty Supreme, which kind of has that little bit of a Nora thing going for it too, based on the reactions that I saw at New York. Felt very much like a movie that art appreciators and moviegoers can both appreciate. But we'll have to see. Let's look at what I think the Oscar night could look like for One Battle. I think most likely PTA is going to win his long overdue Oscar. I think director looks stronger than picture at this point, but I think Best Picture is looking pretty good as well. Out of the Oscar contenders currently, One Battle After Another currently ranks the highest on Metacritic and Letterboxd ratings. And when stacked against PTA's filmography, it has surpassed There Will Be Blood as PTA's most critical acclaimed film yet. Now, critical support doesn't always equal Oscars. Some could consider this film and PTA to be one that's made more for cinephiles and Twitter, not moviegoers. But even looking at audience reception, CineScore, which polls average moviegoers, they gave a film an A, the same score as Oppenheimer, and even a little higher than Everything Everywhere All at Once. The box office for this movie, I will say, hasn't been incredible. However, it is PTA's highest grossing film thus far. I kind of feel like this film needs to make back its budget because I can't think of a time where a Best Picture winner has won without making back its budget. And I think ultimately it will probably be pretty close, and I don't think this movie is going to be seen as a failure at all. I think WB is probably stoked enough with the results of this film because it is going to be an awards player. The most likely winner next, I would say, screenplay. Out of the last 10 years, the winner of Best Picture has been attached to a screenplay win 6 times, and to me, One Battle After Another really fits the No Country for Old Men Best Picture win, which also came along with Best Adapted Screenplay. Another example is The Departed, a film that won Best Picture. Overdue Narrative also took home Screenplay, so that's a possibility. Another award I can see One Battle winning easily is Best Editing. The last 3 Best Pictures came along with an editing win, and the editing in One Battle, I mean, it's truly fantastic. I think people are going to be thinking about that road climax. The story spans years, there's multiple storylines, and the movie just has an incredible flow. And it's always an achievement when a film of near 3 hours completely flies by and feels like 2. I think those wins feel a little bit more sure for me. And the next tier is Johnny Greenwood's score. Greenwood is a longtime collaborator of PTA. He's been nominated twice before. Somehow didn't get nominated for There'll Be Blood. It's crazy. But he does have tough competition with Sinners. The music in Sinners is really front and center to that story. The score really stood out to me in Sinners. The score really stood out to me in One Battle After Another. But, you know, hey, if One Battle After Another wins Best Picture, maybe this comes along for the ride. We also have to look at the acting, and this film offers an incredible ensemble. I think we could easily see 4 nominations. Leonardo DiCaprio, Sean Penn, I think, are practically locks for nomination. Tiana Taylor looks really good for a nomination as well. Her screen time is rather limited, showing up in that really only the first 30 minutes or so. If they didn't bring her character back for that letter scene at the end, I wouldn't be as confident. Also, her character isn't exactly likable, but she's complicated, and I think her presence is felt far after she leaves the screen. I think she makes a very strong impression. I think she's going to get in. And we just heard also that Chance Infinity, right? She's not running and supporting. She's going to be running in lead. Now, I haven't had really time to think about it, but my first reaction for that is, you know, I don't really know if there's a deeper reason behind her going lead. I don't know if she's doing it for, you know, personal reasons or career reasons. I really wasn't sure, but for me, it's strategy-wise, I don't know if I would have done that. I would have kept her in supporting, because I do think that category is relatively thin. I do think a performance like Chase could have really easily been nominated in supporting. I think lead actress, she's going to struggle a bit more. I mean, she's not even in the first 30 minutes. I think you can even look at last year as an example when Demi Moore didn't win for The Substance. I think when you are kind of co-lead, I think it can really hurt you. Best Actress this year is pretty thin. It's not impossible, especially if they love the film. She's such a beating heart of the film, so she could get in, but she's the one I would feel the least secure about, her and Regina Hall. Benicio del Toro, you know, he is just so cool. He's cool as a cucumber in the film. He's not as showy as Sean Penn in the film, but Del Toro's character just felt instantly iconic. And can you imagine those scenes, like of Leo screaming and having another person screaming? I think Del Toro wisely contrasts Leo's unhinged performance with an assured calmness. And it reminds me a little bit of the year of Three Billboards, where on Oscar nomination morning, Sam Rockwell was nominated, but the surprise was Woody Harrelson was also nominated. And I think Benicio del Toro could be our Woody Harrelson of this year. But in terms of wins, an acting win isn't always a requirement for Best Picture. 6 of the last 10 years, Best Picture came with an acting win. However, it's definitely been a trend of recent years. The last 5 Best Picture winners came with an acting win, 4 of those being lead actors. Now, if I had to guess today, I would likely say Sean Penn is the most likely to be recognized from the film. That's really just an inkling I have. I don't really have a strong reason to really back that up, other than to say that the supporting category is just very kind to villain roles. Javier Bardem, No Country for Old Men, for example. And Sean Penn's performance as Colonel Lockjaw is just despicable in all the best ways. And I remember Sean Penn in his acceptance speech years ago when he won for Milk saying,
"To be very clear that I do know how hard I make it to appreciate me often."
And 16 years later, I just have a feeling that he might be someone that people want to appreciate once again. It's not a guarantee, though. We still have Stellan Skarsgård and Paul Mescal, but I currently have Sean Penn out in front for the win. And Leonardo DiCaprio, at first, that wasn't something I was so sure about. You know, the role was very much in his wheelhouse. I don't think really anyone is surprised that he can give a performance like that. The role is just also very comedic, which typically the Academy likes to award, I would say, more serious performances in that lead category. At the same time, his character is just so incredibly lovable, but a clear frontrunner, I think, has emerged with Chalamet and Marty Supreme. But there's still a possibility, you know, if it's winning Best Picture, like I said, the last few Best Picture winners had a Best Actor attached, and maybe it's Leo. We'll have to see. And talking about casting more, I mean, if this film is Love to High Heaven, yeah, maybe Chase Infinity and Actress can happen, or Regina Hall can have an America Ferrera-like nomination and supporting. Realistically, though, I think my guess is around 11 or 12 nominations in these categories and wins in these categories. That would be my guess if I had to guess today. I try to always make an effort to really not get emotionally invested in seeing certain films' wins. I try to maintain a sense of objectiveness, but I have to admit, you know, after seeing Chris Nolan win and Sean Baker win, you know, we're really entering a really exciting period in the Oscars, and I'd really love to see an original film like One Battle After Another and PTA recognized. I actually called my dad after watching this movie and told him, "Dad, you gotta watch this movie." And I knew it. Likely a movie about revolutionaries with names like Jungle Pussy and a secret society of white supremacists called the Christmas Adventures Club. I knew that likely wouldn't be his bag, but you know, the end completely got me. You know, without getting personal, Bob Ferguson really reminded me of my dad. You know, not in the sense that he's an ex-revolutionist or a pothead or someone who would ever forget secret codes to anything he was supposed to remember. But, you know, he's always been a support system for me. He cared for me unconditionally. So Dad, if you're watching this, you know, he watches 1 out of every 20 videos or so. Maybe he's watching. But if you are, I'm, you know, sorry I encouraged you to watch this movie. 2, you know, thanks so much for always being there for me. But those are my thoughts about One Battle After Another. Let me know in the comment section below whether this is a film that you enjoyed. Let me know your favorite scenes and what you think its Oscar prospects are. You can follow me on all the socials, LinkedIn, Letterboxd, Instagram, links in the bio. And if you enjoyed this video and you want to see more Oscar-related content, then feel free to hit that subscribe button. And until next time, everybody, I'll see you at the Oscars. Where hopefully One Battle After Another wins.